Welcome to another episode of Man vs. Marriage. It's me again, the Q Dog, in the studio with Coach Rita.
Hello.
Yep, Ashley, our producer's in the studio, and my lovely wife. She's here. It's going to be a really cool episode today where we share together. And this is this little mini series we're kind of doing, if you will, about rewriting the script. And what does that look like? Because I think, Coach Rita, I think that's something that you really have been able to add some color to. It's like things are really good to say, but if you don't know what it looks like, or you don't stop to ask the question, well, what does that look like?
Right.
Then the both of you are going to have a different understanding and different expectations.
Right.
So rewriting the script, kind of an episode 2, if you will, and I'm going to hand it over to you so you can hand it over to us. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Yes.
I know we've been talking, if you've been following along, is rewriting the script. It's really looking at how you were raised, what you've been taught when it comes to relationships. And this episode is, how do you do that? Like, how do you rewrite that script that's been handed to me, and I respond and I react according to what I've seen as a little child, or what I've seen growing up, watching my parents do their relationship. So in how you rewrite it, it's basically discovering first what it is you want to change. What is it in my relationship? What is it in my marriage that I want to change, or I want to see different? And it even can be as much as, I don't really like that about me, or I don't like that I respond that way. So how do I go about to change this? And it's sitting down and having that conversation with your spouse to put out a plan, put out a goal of, these are areas that I see within myself that I would like to see change, that I want to make a goal that this is what we see our marriage, and this is what we're going to work towards. It's all seen into the future, what it is that you want, and then you start putting into practice those things. It's kind of like this, and this is how I use the example, is that you're the farmer, and your harvest out there, your land, is your marriage. And as a farmer, farmers are going to plant, or they're going to plant apple seeds to get apples. Like, what you plant is what you're going to reap in your harvest. So you have to look at it as in that you are a farmer. My marriage is my harvest. What is it that I want that harvest to reap? So if I need to sow compassion, if I need to sow love, if I need to sow to nurture, you name it. You name your harvest, whatever it is that you want to have at the end of the day, those are the seeds that you have to start planting. Now, for myself, I wouldn't want to be a farmer because that's a lot of work. Like, when I think of living on a farm, it's taking care of a lot of things. It's feeding it. It's watering it. You're out there every day tending to it. You're looking to make sure no bugs are getting in there, weeds are getting in there. So what I'm saying is that this is work. Yeah. It's not something that you just go into marriage and think that it's just going to organically be happily ever after by you just showing up.
Right.
Marriage takes work. It's putting in what it is that you want at the end of the day, and it's up to you to make that choice to start sowing that seed. Because a lot of people just come into marriages without any clue as to what they're even doing. Mm-hmm. And then you get into your marriage a couple years down the road, and you're wondering to yourself, how did we get here? Well, what seed have you been sowing along the way? What have you been investing in your marriage? Have you made a plan Like, have you came up with goals? Like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. Have you, I know so many people look at counseling, marriage counseling is like a failure, like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Going to like conferences, marriage conferences and stuff, it has like this negative, negative touch to it. Like if you have to go to counseling, then something's wrong with you. I don't believe that. I believe
Right.
smart people ask for help.
That's right.
And when you know that, it's kind of like when you're sick and you don't feel good and you know something's going on with you, like you go to the doctor to figure out what's wrong in order for them to help you, because they're obviously a little bit more smarter, and that's why they're doctors and all of that. Well, sometimes I think we need to look at counselors that way, is that if I'm having an issue and a problem in my marriage, maybe that counselor has something that I might not know.
That's right.
Then that could give me that the help and the information that I would need in order to make this better. So I just think a lot of times we just don't invest in how are we going to navigate our way through this marriage.
Yes.
I think we just do it as things come up, as arguments come up, as circumstances come up, and then we start dealing with the issue at hand instead of really putting out a goal and a plan and a purpose and being intentional as to how it is you want your marriage to end up. Because this is what I tell people all the time. When I'm 80, 90, 120, sitting across the table from my husband, I want to know that I know who he is and he knows who I am.
Yeah.
That we just didn't create our lives just around our kids, or that, everything else in life was more important than each other. I want to know that when those times come and we're old and growing old together, that I'm sitting across the table and I know exactly who he is.
Yeah.
But it's sowing that seed.
You got to.
So it's really, I can say this and I can put a lot of information out there and give a lot of tools. But I think sometimes when it comes from experience, when someone can say, this is how we did it, or this is how we went about doing it, I think it becomes a little bit more obtainable, a little bit more understandable, because you're understanding where someone is coming from.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for us to be able to put that out there for the listeners to say, this is how you go about rewriting it. Because you've come from a divorce family background. You've come from a totally different background than from what Jeannie came from.
That's right.
You're both coming in with these ideas already, these things in your mind that this is how marriage works. This is what it looks like. And I know both of you said, no, not for us.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
like,
right.
nope, that's not what I want. And I think it's important that you guys have something to share. You have something to give to the people to say, this can be done.
Yeah.
This really can be done. It's not just lip service of saying, you and I just coming up with really great topics for our podcast.
Yeah.
It's really saying, if you really want to start making a change in your marriage, these are the things that you can do.
True. And I mean, if you, maybe you're an athlete, maybe you're a CrossFit athlete, maybe you're a writer, maybe you look at, you're a chef. I mean, if whatever your hobby or your profession is, or what you're serious about, you generally, what's the word? You generally kind of, it's not elevate. What's the darn word I'm looking for? I don't know. You kind of put your life, or you respect the people that are successful in whatever industry you're in. You gravitate. Man, that's the word I was looking for. You kind of gravitate towards those people that have success. And so if you're a golfer for the longest time, you want to know what Tiger Woods is doing. As much as this pains me to say it, if you're a football player, you love the NFL, you want to gravitate towards Tom Brady. Not a Patriots fan. But those are the people you look at to say, wow, these people are successful. Why? And then you kind of apply those principles to your life, because you think, wow, maybe this really is possible. And I think you said it so well with the using the analogy or the example of a farmer. Because if you plant corn and then you expect cucumbers, you're crazy. You're crazy. And maybe right now your marriage is full of cucumbers, but you want corn in your life. So today, hopefully this discussion is, well, how did you go and clear the field? How did you make sure that you had the right seed? How did you plant it? How did you water it? How did you ensure that, all the different disasters that Mother Nature has didn't come and destroy that? I'm just my poor wife has to suffer through me being so practical at times and having to, make things relatable. But it's kind of like you said, Rita. If I could relate it to anything, you go buy a new car and they give you a maintenance plan. If you don't follow the maintenance plan and you don't do any kind of service, and then your car, starts to have a problem and it goes to break down, and you don't take it to a mechanic, it's just going to break. It's not going to work. Or if instead of taking it to a mechanic, you take it to a restaurant and ask a chef what's going on with your car, or maybe you're asking your friend who has a bad marriage for marriage advice, it's not going to work. And so what you've just invested your money in or your life, it's not going to pay you the dividends that you originally set out to get. So, and I know that's just like an elementary type example there, but for me, I just have to make it really relatable for myself. If I'm going to buy or if I'm going to invest myself or my finances into something, I want to make sure that I'm keeping up with whatever it is and that it's properly maintained, so that it has the best opportunity to be successful. So that's why I'm happy to have you in the studio, honey, and to have you talking with me today about how we went about rewriting the script. Now, first of all, I just want to honor my wife for being here today, because she could have pulled the plug. She could have pulled the plug on this today, because there was no sleep till Brooklyn at my house last night, because Kirsten just wouldn't sleep. And really all she did all night was call everybody's name in the house, wanting for somebody to come and turn her TV on, and she's banging on walls and doors. And so you could have,
a fun night.
you could have very easily, none of us slept, but you could have very easily just said, nope, I can't do this today, but I thank you for showing up anyway. And it's going to be very valuable for the listeners and for us in our relationship too. For how we just go, about talking about how we rewrote the script. Because we had some hang-ups. We had some hard things, like you said, coming from a divorce. Most part of my life growing up in the South, part of my life growing up on the West Coast, seeing the difference. I had a stepmother, and that was a very volatile situation between my dad and my stepmom. It was not good. And then, my mom out here, she never remarried again. So, a lot of things go through your mind, and you get worried about arguments when they come up, and you're like, I'm going to argue. I'll just let it go. Maybe it'll just take care of itself. Well, it never does.
When you married a woman who does nothing more than to argue, that was the worst way to go on that one.
Well, and I've said it before, my family, we just love to argue, just to debate. And it just gets your blood flowing so you feel alive.
Where mine likes to argue to win.
Yeah, yeah, and there is that. So one of the if I could start us off, and then maybe, honey, you could add some color play here. One of the things that when you talk about rewriting the script, something that was very impactful for me when I first started listening to podcasts was Jay Ferrugia, and he's a guy who started in New York, and he's a workout guy, been in Men's Health, and he was really, like a power lifting guy. And he said something on a podcast one day that just shook me. And it was somebody he was talking to about life. And he said, so here's the outlook on life. Fast forward in your mind to your funeral and figure out what you would want people to say about you. What do you want the message about you to be? Now come back to reality and set your course to live like that kind of a person. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was life altering for me, because I was early on into living life by design, and I think we were just getting ready, or maybe had just started our marriage counseling, and it's like I could actually decide who I want to be. Who would I want my wife, if I kick off before she does, what would that lasting impact or legacy be that I would want her to say in front of people? And recently we went to a funeral together for my friend's mother, and his dad stood up there, and the way he spoke about his wife, it was like, I hope I leave that kind of impact on my wife.
They all did. Everybody said the exact same thing about her, that she loved everybody. Nobody ever left a stranger when they were in her presence. She didn't let anybody feel left out. It was like a repetitive message from everybody that we heard that spoke about her. It was the same thing over and over again. It was like, wow. And that was a pretty full room.
So it's like, if I take that, and it's like, what kind of a person, like planting seeds, what kind of a person do I want to be? And you look at successful people and you start to gravitate towards them. So you look at your marriage, you look at, I looked at your marriage, I looked at, obviously Coach Saban, to see how he kind of directed his life for success and what his personal philosophy was. And I just started to redevelop the personal philosophy. And when I rewrite the script, that was my intention, to talk about how did I redesign myself and my personal philosophy. I didn't really think about at the time how it would coincide with how did we rewrite the script to our marriage. And there was a time where something that really sticks out to me about the links that Jeannie and I went to redefine our marriage and how we interacted with one another was one of our counseling moments when, I would tell her, it's like I got some advice, or I heard something great, or maybe you were coaching us and I said, oh, well, that makes sense to me. So snap, I'm just changing. Now, I don't do things this way anymore. I'm changing. And Jeannie, on the other hand, that's not the way that she rolls. She needs time to kind of put a plan, or to kind of plan out this progression of change in a much slower way. And I think at that point, and I'm just using this as the foundation for how we rewrote the script. At that point, we started to understand, or I understood this, is that I was expecting her to be me and to change how I change. I was not embracing or appreciating who my wife was and how lasting her change is once she lets it follow that course. And maybe she was doing the same for me, which is to say, well, it's not possible for you to mean that you've changed that way, because I can't change that way. So we had competing ideas about who each other was and about what change meant for each of us, because change is at the root of rewriting something. You got to do something different. So that to me is kind of the catalyst to what really helped Jeannie and I, because you kind of looked at her and said, Jeannie, listen, when Quincy says that this has changed for him, it's changed. You got to take him at his word, because it's done. So it kind of helped me to see that in order to change, you really have to commit yourself to embracing the differences in your spouse. And like Jeannie and I talked about on the way over here, if we both changed the way that I did, we could really create some havoc in our life. And if we both change the way that she does, a lot of havoc could happen to us because we're not making change at the appropriate time or situation. So it's actually a beautiful thing that we're different because we can get balance. You know, we can have the best of both worlds where there's situations that demand immediate change. I can help there. And where there are situations it's like, whoa, you need to really think this thing through and start the process of change so it doesn't destroy the people around you. We can have the best of both worlds. But that to me, that willingness, listen, you got to get away from, I can't do that because I've always done it this way. This is just who I am. You have to be willing to release those resentments of the past in order to move forward, or you will not authentically change. And that's something that I was willing to do, was willing to just let everything that had happened before us, you know, the things we had done to each other, as me as a man, I had to just let those things go and understand one thing about my wife that I truly honor and respect, and that's she would never hurt me on purpose. She would not hurt me on purpose. So I can't hold her accountable for things that happen based on you just want to hurt me. And that to me is something that that's kind of just where I wanted to start with that. And I would love to stop talking now and let you talk about a little bit about how you started to rewrite and how you had to deal with me.
Well, I think a couple of things that we did was we had to go back, and as much as we didn't want to go in the past, we had to look at where you come from and where I come from. And the household I grew up in, fear was a motivating factor. Whoever controlled the fear controlled the house. So I was raised in a place where fighting was normal, getting your way was normal, going for the jugular was normal. And you had to be strong. You could not show weakness. So when you and I got together and we would argue, that was my go-to. You're not going to hurt me. You're not allowed to. And it took understanding I didn't want to fight with you. I didn't want to have to be right. What I wanted was to be protected, because the whole time growing up, I wasn't. I was in fear. So I wasn't protected. I was scared. So when things in my house happened, you could tell me you've changed, but it had been my experience. Words mean nothing in my house. I've seen it time and time again where we just talked about this not long ago. Flowers are an apology. We didn't get flowers just because. We got flowers because somebody screwed up. So if you showed up to give me flowers, even for Valentine's Day, for years, I won't celebrate it. This is the first year that I'm like, hey, let's go do something. Because that was the only day that a huge gesture was done in my house. And it was like, why? It's a waste. And I've seen the flowers before. I know what they're for, so there's really no meaning behind it. And it sounds petty, but as a child, watching my mother be treated a certain way, this is what I understood. So when we got together and I watched his family unfold in front of me, and it's like, okay, we've got his mom and his dad and his stepmom and his other stepmom, and it's like his dad went from one extreme to the other like that, and it's like, okay, that right there is a family trait. Y'all can just wake up one morning and I'm done, it's over, I'm better. I can't. But he had to learn to understand, I hear you, I know you're telling me you've changed your mind, I understand all of that. But I have to see it to know that you mean it. And it's not meant to be hurtful. It's simply a process I've been taught. And once I can physically see, okay, you know what? He is talking to me a little bit different. He is behaving a little bit differently. It doesn't take very long. It's just a matter of seeing it happen, and then I'm okay. But we had to learn. For you, I think it was figuring out, the biggest part of it was through conversation with Rita, her coming through and going, she needs you to protect her. And some of the situations we were going through at the time, I wasn't being protected. And if I'm not protected by you, then I'm going to protect myself. And that means you're going to get the backlash, and so is everybody else in my path.
Yeah.
So, thinking about this, you talk about clearing the field. We walked through with a bunch of landmines and blew the thing up. We didn't just walk into this. I mean, the very first meeting we had, it was, what is your biggest conflict? We both resented each other. And when that hit the ground, it was just like, oh, okay, well. That's a big one. We did that class, and it was like, write down on a piece of paper where you think your marriage is. He had a 6, I had a 3. And we had no clue the other one was on that page. And as soon as it came out, it's like, ooh, we need to talk to Rita.
I just need to correct the record. It was a 7 and a 5, not a 6 and a 3.
But I think we just learned, I learned from watching your family. And I hope they don't take offense to any of this, but how they talk to each other and how you guys joke. And it's meant to be playful. But I watched him. It wasn't playful to him. He was bantering back and forth because this was the normal. But I could see certain things that were hurting him. And it would piss me off because this is my number one person. And my mode is protective. I'm in fear. I need to be protected. And you're hurting him, so I need to protect him. So I had to switch. When I started realizing that, I had to switch how I talk to him. Okay, he's being funny. He thinks he's being silly, but he's not. This really hurts him. So I had to learn how to say things without making you think I would hurt you on purpose.
Yeah.
I had to rethink your love language was, words of affirmation. And here I was every time you want to go to the clouds going, whoa, 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 whoa. My fear took over and there was no way we're going to the clouds. You're done. But once I realized you just need me to go for a ride for a minute, kind of see where you're at. It doesn't take long for you to come back down to what can and can't happen. And I don't have to stand there and go, what about A, B, C, D, E? You usually figure it out on your own. But as long as I can go there and say, okay, we'll just look at it. I mean, we did it with a house. Let's go look for a house. Okay, I went to the clouds way before he did. But then when we finally came down to it, I honestly got to the point where I just thought this isn't going to happen. He never got to that point. We now have a new house. So I can't really say it's all in both of us seeing eye to eye all the time. Because we clearly don't. But it was learning how to talk to him and make sure that he was listening to me. It was coming up with key phrases. Those are huge for us. Mm-hmm. Speed bump is a big one. We just discovered recently how that works because he texted me, speed bump coming your way. Okay, my thought with speed bump is you're sending me something that is going to crash my plan. So I'm prepared for screwing things up for me. It wasn't meant to be that way. He needed comfort for something, and when he dropped it, it was going to affect something in my plan. So I took it that way. It was going to mess up some plans that he and I had made for getting away. But it was something with work, and I'm like, well, you need to figure this out. You need to fix this. This has to happen. This has to happen. And then later he was like, I was actually calling you for comfort because this spun him. It's like, okay, we need a new word. Because speed bump means that you're about to wreck my plan. It doesn't mean I need you to listen. So, but we had to come up with those things. It's like being able to have a conversation. We had a conversation with kids the other night, and I was having a moment where I was so pissed. I was physically shaking and crying. And the girls are telling him, Dad, Mom's crying. Dad, look, Mom's crying, like trying to nudge him because they didn't want to disturb me. And he's going, yeah, this is not a hug her moment. This is not a put my arms around her and comfort her moment. Just let her be. They couldn't figure out why he wasn't wanting to hug me and comfort me. He knows not to. I'll lose it. But he's had to learn that because it used to be if I was upset, he would come in and try to make me laugh and joke, or he would come in and try to give me a hug and be silly. And it's like, I'm pissed. Don't make me laugh right now. This isn't going to go well for you. But we didn't know those things about each other. This is how his family dealt with stuff. My family dealt with it very differently.
Well, one of the things that stands out to me in the moment, and we talked about this, you get aha moments when you're just, and all we're doing is having a conversation. This was not a structured, 6 points to a better this or that. This was, I wanted to get the conversation moving. And one thing that's very interesting to me listening to it now that I never saw before is in her house, words mean nothing. But to me, I'm a man of my word, and it means everything to me. So for her, she can say something, and then if she doesn't do it a couple times because she's taking the time to, kind of progress and change, it's okay with her. But I would take it as you don't care because you're not holding up to your word. Because to me, my word is everything to me. So that's kind of just that was a moment that said, wow, these are really two opposite worlds. And those were like competing interests with each other. And so I guess the moral of this, that's just a big deal to me. That when I say something, it means everything to me. My words are obviously too many most of the time, but they're full. They mean something. It is heaven and earth to me, my words. And I'm not saying that yours aren't, honey, but what I'm saying is what you grew up in, talk is cheap. Action is all that matters.
But you always back your words with action. You always do, since you've learned, I think learning that that's how I work.
Yeah.
You've always backed it. And if I tell you I'm going to do something, or right now the key phrase between the two of us is I'm working on this. So that he knows I'm not negating my promise to you, but this is going to take a little more time because some of the things that we're working on now are a little bit harder than when we first started. When we first started, we went in, we blew everything up, but now that we're going back to replant, it's like, oh God, okay. This one's going to take a little more digging to get to the bottom and figure out just how far I need this root to come out before we move forward. But I don't necessarily not take you at your word now. But in the beginning, it was a matter of being able to say, I got to see this. I got to see it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's important, just, kind of to start to wrap this whole thing up, one thing that's important is to know what kind of communication your spouse needs in order to understand that change is going on. Right. Because for me, I can give people, the benefit of the doubt as long as I see there's effort and progress there. Mm-hmm. If I see a I don't give a crap attitude, it kind of infuriates me a little bit because it's like, are you all in on this or not? Right. Why do I care more about what you want to change in your life than you do? Mm-hmm. So, I guess to sum this all up before you give us a little bit, a couple of exercises, if you will, when it comes to rewriting the script, what will help you the most that helped me was really with an open mind and zero expectations, learn who your wife is. Now it takes some knowing who you are, but learn who your wife is and let her work through her expectations of you in the relationship. You really have to go in with an open mind and then embrace who she is.
Right.
Maybe she doesn't know, like you didn't know before this, that you can actually be intentional about the person that you want to be.
Yes.
So embrace each other where you are and understand that you get to decide what this looks like to you, and you can rewrite this together. And that's exciting.
Right.
Even though change can be really scary, it's exciting to think that you can actually make your marriage a bright spot in your life.
Yes.
Instead of something that you just have to do because you said you would.
Right.
So thank you for opening up the show.
Thank you guys for sharing and putting it out there and being vulnerable. There's one thing that I just find very interesting is, Jeannie, when you were expressing about flowers, about, flowers represented you did something wrong, so you're kissing butt, pretty much what it is. And the funny thing is, what I always find interesting is that it wasn't like her mom and dad sat down and said, well, this is what the flowers mean.
Yeah.
Kids see things, kids can interpret things, and we always think that, the kids aren't they're not paying attention to what it is that's going on. It's like, that was something that she was taught, and no one said a word. And it's like how much we take in, and we're sponges when we're little kids, and we see these things being played out in our parents' lives and how it affects our relationships today. And no one said a word. That it was all done by an action and how it was that you interpret it. As a little kid, as a little 4, 5, 6-year-old, you're interpreting it on that state of your emotional state of how you are then, that it follows you through your adulthood and into relationships. So that's why, to me, it is so, so important to rewrite the script, because now you can enjoy Valentine's Day. Now you can enjoy the flowers for what they are. Sure, there might be some flowers in there that I am sorry I screwed up. That's a whole different segment. but it for you looking at it and redefining it, and that's what rewriting the script is. It's really redefining what it is that you've been taught. So these are some things that you could do. These are things that you can ask yourself. What seed am I planting in my marriage?
Yeah.
If you just stop and just kind of reevaluate what it is, all you have to do is look at your marriage and say, okay, these are seeds that I see that I've planted, and I need to start uprooting that and plant something different. Am I sowing the right seed to get the right harvest? Like when we talked in the beginning, if you're going to sow apples, you're going to get apples.
That's right.
So it's redefining what it is that you want in your marriage. I'm just going to finish up with just these quotes. And I love what you shared in the beginning, Quincy. It's all about making a choice to decide, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
It's a decision, and it's a choice that you've made, that you both made, that, okay, we're clearing the field like you guys did. You guys had like bombs everywhere. But that's what you guys chose. That's you. That's who you are. So let's just go with it.
Yeah.
And let's blow it all up, but then we'll bring it back together, and then we can figure it out from there. But that's who you guys are.
Yep.
So you choose your reality. You choose to see your relationship as a gift or a burden. You choose to see your marriage as a struggle or a blessing. So choose wisely. So if you want to change your spouse, your marriage, your relationship, it starts with you. You are the one that has to start that change. You cannot expect that you can change someone else in order for your marriage, your relationships, and everything else to be okay. It has to start with you. You have to make that choice.
So right. And I appreciate you kind of wrapping up the show for us today with a couple of action items, or a call to action, if you will, because it's time to decide who you want to be and what you want your marriage to be. And I think if with all the information we kind of put out there today, if you can kind of come to those two things, guys, and just start making some decisions, that is the point where, it's the pivotal point of, are you going to allow your life to be, or this area in your life to maybe be not as fulfilling as you wanted, or potentially a disappointment, or are you going to decide to make a change?
Right.
And now it's up to you. The ball's in your court.
Yep.
So I think this was a fantastic episode, honey. You did fabulous.
Yes.
Absolutely fabulous. Hey, we would love to get your feedback. So take note of a brand new email address coming to you, brought to you by Man vs. Marriage. So email us. It's coach@manvsmarriagepodcast.com. So that's coach@manvsmarriagepodcast.com. Reach out to us on the email. You can hit us up on Twitter @MVSM Podcast, or connect with us on Facebook. at Manvsmarriagepodcast. Is that right? How do I not know my own Facebook?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. I told you. Yeah, you see that? I told you what was up. Anyway, until the next episode, there's not really anything else to say. That's it. Connect with us, and thank you so much for listening. Until next time, we out.